What's going on, everybody? It is that time again. The Sooners Illustrated podcast, episode 176.
176.
On this Thursday, May 22nd, 25. Josh Callaway, James D. Jackson with you on a Thursday. We flipped things around this week. Had the recruiting show on Monday with Colin. Lots of good conversation there about the two newest commits and, of course, an update on Bo Bentley. If you missed that show, it's not going anywhere. Still in your podcast feed, still on YouTube. Lots of good information there. We have James here with me today. We're going to get into some diamond sports. Softball Super Regionals start tomorrow, Friday, down in Norman. James will be there. Baseball doing some good things out in Hoover right now, the SEC tournament. So a lot to talk about, to get into with those two programs. We'll do that here today. Tom Green on vacation. He'll be back with us on Monday. We'll get back to a normal schedule, have some football and some hoop stuff that we'll want to hit with him on Monday, but we'll save it for when he can be here. James and I will recap some diamond sports with you here on a Thursday, send you into your Memorial Day weekend. So on that, James, let's do some softball. Big weekend, of course, super regional weekend, trying to punch their ticket back to the WCWS, going for that 5-peat. Let's first backtrack to the regional, and then we'll get into this weekend, the rematch with Alabama. You know, you and I talked about it going in, that it felt like the super regional draw was on the tougher side, but the regional was pretty manageable on paper. Oklahoma owned, just dominated their way through the Norman regional, which is the norm. Now, we've seen OU do that for years. They have rarely been pushed in their home regional. Certainly was the case again on last weekend. You were at these games over the weekend. Boston, Cal a couple times. It was 3 dominant wins. Feels like the way they're playing right now, you kind of loop in what they did in the SEC tournament. Obviously didn't get to play that championship game, but feels like, is it fair to say, as someone who's covered the team all year and watched them all year, this is as well as they played all year right now? They dominated over the weekend down in Norman.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no doubt. No doubt. This is the best they've played. Even Patty Gasso is saying that now from what we just saw. I mean, they outscored their opponents 31-3 throughout this regional. I mean, that is phenomenal. And when you think about what some other teams had to go through in their regionals, like you say, maybe it's an easier regional for OU, but some teams struggled. Some teams lost. Texas A&M didn't even get out of there. You know, it's a tough situation because anything can happen. And so OU taking care of business and playing the way they did is such a good sign for what's to come for them. You know, Sam Landry pitched all 3 games for OU, got to start in all 3 games, and you kind of got some of your relievers in, and it showed that this pitching staff is looking a lot better, you know, here down the line, only giving up 3 runs, and I think only 2 of them were earned runs. So it was a really good situation for them offensively. Oklahoma's just phenomenal. I mean, I don't know if you saw it. Ella Parker hit like the farthest home run I've ever seen
I did
in
see
softball.
that one. Yeah.
I mean, that 285 feet, it cleared it. It didn't clear just the stands of Lowe's Field. It went out of the backside fence. It was a black fence on the outside of the sidewalk. That was insane. And that was like the last home run Oklahoma needed to run Rural Cal for the regional championship. So it just showed like everything was building up to that point. And it's like, man, this team they're just getting better and better. They're just so much further along than everybody's preseason expectations of where they could be at. It's just great right now. I mean, it's absolutely phenomenal. I mean, Patty Gasso said it yesterday. She had no idea that Gabby Garcia was going to be the leading home run hitter on their team. 18 home runs. Like she said, when I was recruiting her, she was more of a bunt first type of player, offensively. And now she's where she's at now. It just shows what this Oklahoma staff has done to get these players to where they are now. You talk about JT Gasso and what he does for the hitters, having them watch film, learning about their bodies, learning the breathing techniques, and then Jen Rocha getting the pitching staff to be where they're at this point in time. I know they've struggled throughout the year, but where they're at right now, it looks pretty good. And so it's just great right now where Oklahoma is. And I know we're going to talk about the super regional. I mean, just great from what we saw throughout the region from Oklahoma.
No doubt. We talked about it going in that Sam Landry is obviously pitching at an extremely high level right now, and you can get away with that in softball, having one arm that is just dominant. Now, like we talked about before, Patty doesn't want to necessarily throw her arm off, right? Throw every single game. But you can lean on one pitcher. You can kind of get away with it, certainly in softball. You can't do that in baseball. It's a totally different sport in that regard. And so she continues to dominate. And if you get these other arms feeling confident, pitching well, like you said, it was a team effort this weekend. They barely gave up anything, against Boston and Cal a couple times. So the team-wide pitching is what's exciting, because the offense, they're going to score. They can hit home runs. They can kind of do a little everything. And we know Sam Landry's that dominant ace. But if they're going to win the title, they're going to need other pitchers to step up. And it's one weekend. Again, the competition's going to get a lot better. But that's the exciting thing, I think, if you're an OU fan right now. You're feeling confident in the whole staff, which is a good place to be in. And like you noted, Texas A&M, number one team, gets upset, doesn't get out of the regional. Kind of gives you a little extra appreciation for the fact that Oklahoma continues to take care of business in their regional every year, right? Every year in, year out. James, I'm not going to ask, are they the favorites? Because they obviously are. They arguably were before the weekend. I'm sure some people would have said A&M. It was kind of split. They were number one. A&M gets upset. If you happen to not see that, first time ever, number one team doesn't win their regional since they went to this format.
Yep.
Oklahoma's got the target on their back again. They're clearly the favorites. They're the highest ranked team. They're going for 5 in a row. Just kind of your assessment of the field. We'll talk about the matchup, but just kind of after the weekend, there was some carnage. There were some upsets. A&M, obviously the big one, number one, goes down. Feels like Oklahoma clearly is the favorite to win this thing again. Got to go do it. But after this weekend with some kind of mass carnage around the sport, it just, again, kind of gives you a little extra appreciation for the fact that Oklahoma continues to dominate this thing year after year after year, and they're back in another super regional.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think they're the favorites, and I think the only thing that can stop this Oklahoma team is maybe a historic level type of pitcher. Now, the bad part about that I say that is if they get past Alabama in this super regional, they're going to have to face an historical type of pitcher in the first round, because you're either going to get Tennessee with Carolina Pickens, the fastest pitcher of all time, or you're going to get Jordy Ball, former Sooner, who is just like a dual sport, goes both ways, so it'll be fun. Maybe Jordy Ball is a better matchup because they know her so well. Maybe JT Gasso has some tricks up his sleeve to know, maybe where she struggles in certain situations. Maybe they could do that, but that's what it's going to have to come down to. So I think if they get past that, there's nobody that's going to stop them. I mean, you could think maybe Nigeri Kennedy, she's on the other side of the bracket, so you wouldn't really meet her until the final. But I mean, that's where I see it right now. Oklahoma is the favorite, but it's going to be a tough matchup in that first round. That's just going to really decide everything for OU, because I think it gets much easier after that. Even though Florida's waiting for you, Florida's always there, and Oklahoma just squeaked by Florida last year with Jada Coleman's walk-off home run. So I mean, it's going to be a tough road, but it's a tough road for everybody. And I think when you look at it in terms of what everybody has to go through, Oklahoma is probably the favorite, just looking at it that way.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. And, we'll obviously talk about it more on Monday if they get through Alabama, but winning that first one is obviously huge. Now, they've won the national title, losing the first one before, with obviously a part of that historic part of this run, right? That senior class when they got upset by James Madison and managed to play their back way through. But that is very hard to do, right? And that takes a really, really, really special team to pull that off. So that would be probably, I think, a fair concern, and we'll talk about that more when we get there. But like you said, if you get through Bama, you're going to see one or the other because it's Nebraska and Tennessee are playing in that 10-7. So going to be interesting, and look forward to hopefully getting to preview the WCWS on Monday. Plan is for us to both be there. James will also be there down this weekend for the Super Regional. And that's what we want to turn to next. So Oklahoma, Alabama, as expected, went chalk here. These two teams played about a little over a month ago in Tuscaloosa. It was April 12th, 13th, 14th. Oklahoma won the first game 5-1, lost the middle game 6-1, and then lost the rubber match 2-1 in 8 innings. Obviously, the number I think that would jump out there is the fact that OU only scored 1 run in the 2 losses, right? The Alabama did a really good job holding the OU offense down. For you, James, looking at this matchup, I mean, this is it'll be in Norman this time. That's certainly a big difference. Obviously, big crowds will be expected, as always, at Love's Field, home field advantage, all that good stuff. But this is an Alabama team that you would imagine would have some confidence. They already took a series from OU. They probably feel like they've maybe got a little something on the pitching side, that they found a little something, Your thoughts going into this weekend and some keys for Oklahoma. Obviously, you were dialed into that series in Tuscaloosa a little over a month ago. What did Oklahoma do that weekend that they can't do this time around? Or just what are the storylines for you? What does Oklahoma got to do to get this done and get back to Oklahoma City?
The way I'll address it is, in terms of Oklahoma, it's going to be it's like everything is lined up for them in this time around. So Alabama has a really, really tough situation. At the time, Oklahoma's offense was going into the series struggling. They were in a slump. Ella Parker was still kind of coming off her injury. Cassie Pickering wasn't all the way there yet. They hadn't really figured out everything just yet. And now on the other side of that, Oklahoma's offense is just hitting on all cylinders right now. They're very all the way dialed in. Ella Parker is fully healthy. It seems like out there the way she's playing now, and it's insane for what they're doing offensively. You spoke about the crowd. Alabama had the crowd on their side. It was an away game for Oklahoma. Mm-hmm. Now you come back to Love's Field in Norman, the biggest stadium, and from what they can do in front of their crowd and how they play, that is a tougher situation for Alabama. And also, you got to look at it as you have to beat Oklahoma in a series 2 times in 1 year. I mean, how difficult is that, in terms of historically what Oklahoma does? Sure. And so that's kind of the things that are working in Oklahoma's favor in this one. These girls have already said they're ready to go. They're ready to do it. And they're playing their best softball right now. There's no worse time, I guess, for Alabama to face Oklahoma than right now. And it wasn't like Alabama won that Oklahoma series and then just stormed off to a great, final ending of their season like Oklahoma did. In fact, they still kind of had a little wishy-washy. They're still struggling a little bit. And their pitching staff had played, Alabama's pitching staff had played their best series overall, I think, at that time of the year. It was their best series overall. They haven't really done that well since. And so that's where Oklahoma is going to have all of basically the advantages going into this one. I mean, that's pretty much what it is. So maybe Alabama gets to fight without, any expectations, where our back's against the wall. Let's just go out there and see what happens. Maybe that's the situation for them. But when you look at it, Oklahoma has all the advantages here. And so they should win this pretty handily, I think. Even though it's a tough matchup on paper, I think Oklahoma's going to get it done.
Yeah, at the risk of, beating a dead horse and kind of making the same point in different ways, game 1 feels huge. You're going to have Sam Landry pitching, presumably, right, in game 1. You get up 1-0, you can rest her in game 2, try to win it with someone else. And you always know in the back of your mind, we can go back to her in game 3 if needed, right? If they lose game 1, how does Patty manage that? I would think that you wouldn't start her back-to-back, but she would have to be available to pitch again. And then, if you win that, now you got to get the job done on Sunday. So the pitching obviously is a factor. The depth, like we just said, had a good weekend, but now you're facing a better team against Alabama. You're going to need other pitchers to step up to win the title. We talked about that. That's been a theme, a storyline the last few weeks. We talked about this team. So getting game 1 under your belt with Landry on the mound, in the circle, I should say, and having the luxury of just knowing we can rest her in game 2. We're going to have Sunday if it comes down to it. That feels huge to me. Not that they couldn't overcome an 0-1 hole, but, you're going to have other pitchers deliver season on the line, which is a bit of a scary spot to be in for Oklahoma, right?
Yeah.
So we'll see. That's tomorrow, 4:00 first game. James will be there. That feels – it's always big, right? I mean, it's a game 1 and a best of 3. We talk about all the time winning game 1, but – it feels vital for Oklahoma in this spot to get on the board with Sam Landry in the first game, to give them a little bit of buffer with the pitching, because otherwise it's season on the line. You need these other pitchers to step up to get you across that finish line, which can be a little, scary. It could happen, certainly could happen, easily could happen, but it's a little precarious, I think.
And here's the thing too. I don't think that Sam Landry I don't think she's not able to play back-to-back full inning games.
Sure.
I don't think that's the situation for her. I think she really wants to do that type of stuff based on what Patty Gasso keeps telling us about her competitiveness. I think it's Patty Gasso kind of holding her back. Let's rest you this day, that type of situation. Now, the best case scenario for Oklahoma would be what they did in this regional, where Sam Landry pitches 3 or 4 innings or so and doesn't have a high pitch count and can come back the next day and just not have any, there's nothing wrong with her at all. Like, that's the best thing that could happen. If they could start the both games, if they win both, they could start at both games. That would be great. Now if she has to go the full way, I feel like she can, man. Like, you saw it against Florida where she threw like 150 pitches or so in that first game. And then I think it was game 3, she came back and threw over 100 pitches again. Like, she has the ability to do this. I don't think she necessarily needs the rest day if you don't obviously don't have her over 150, but I think I think she can do that. And so that's kind of where I'm at on the pitching staff. You could really dig into or lean into Sam Landry if you need to, but it has to work out for her because there's sometimes that it could get bad too. But I mean, it would hurt. Sometimes she'll leave a pitch over the plate,
Sure.
and she gives up a home run. Like we talked about it. I can't remember which game it was. I think it was Cal. It was Cal where they got the home run. It was 6 of the last 7 games that she's pitched, and she's given up a home run. And so that's the only issue. But if you have it where she starts the game, Oklahoma's offense actually plays well, and not like they did last time against Alabama, where they only scored 7 runs total, and 6 of those came in the 7th inning of those games. If you score your runs early, hit your home runs that you need, I think it'll be all right for OU. That's where I see it.
I agree. I don't think it's necessarily the conversation as much, could she do it? I agree. I think she could do it. It's will Patty Gasso allow her to do it?
Exactly.
You think back in the day, OU basically let Paige Parker pitch every game through the run to a national title, and she was gassed at the end. And Patty has said, I didn't really like doing that. I don't want to do that again. But, like to your point, chips are down. Sam saying, I want it. Would Patty be willing to relent and just roll with Landry?
Yeah.
That's a question that may not come up, but if it does, it'll be interesting to get that answer. So excited for this weekend. 4:00 first pitch on Friday, 2:00 on Saturday, Sunday. If it's needed, don't have a first pitch time yet for that. It'll depend on how many other games are going on, all that good stuff.
Yeah.
But James will be down there in Norman. It'll be fun to watch. We'll have a lot of coverage, and then we'll be back on Monday to recap it. And presumably, if they win, look ahead to the WCWS, which I think starts next Thursday. I could be wrong on that. I think it's Thursday, the first round, right down the road from us here in Oklahoma City. So fun time of year. Calendar about to shift to June this next weekend. So we're getting into the meat and potatoes here of the softball season. Going to be fun this weekend. Yeah, starting tomorrow. Yeah,
I like that.
A couple of games start tonight as well in the softball supers. Let's shift over to baseball before we sign off here. Good week already in Hoover. I think that's really the main gist of what I want to get across. It's a success already. Okay, 2 wins.
Yep.
It's certainly what you wanted, and some revenge wins at that. I mean, Kentucky swept Oklahoma just 2 weeks ago, and the Sooners knocked them off on Tuesday afternoon. Great, capital G, great pitching on Tuesday from Jaden Barfield, a freshman, making his first start. He goes 4 innings, 1 unearned run. And then Jamie Hitt, the vet lefty, goes 4 innings, shutout out of the pen. And then Crooks, closed it down. Phenomenal. I mean, just to get that, because a lot of people are asking me, I think a bit of a softball brain of, why isn't Kyson pitching on Tuesday? Too quick of a turnaround. It was Friday to Tuesday. You can't use your weekend guys. It's too fast. Like you have to roll with your bullpen basically and hope that they can get the job done for you. And they did, right? I mean, they absolutely delivered. Jaden Barfield, just a freshman, going to be really fun here in the next couple of years. He's fun now, but coming up. So excellent pitching on Tuesday. They get some revenge on Kentucky there. And then they turn around on Wednesday. They face Georgia, who's a top 10 team, leads the country in homers by a mile. Took 2 or 3 from Oklahoma, last month. And they get to throw Kaiser Witherspoon out there, and he was amazing. Again, it's the same thing every week we hop on the show. He goes 7 2/3, which was his longest outing of the season. He was tremendous, gets his 10th win. The bullpen locked it down. The offense did just enough, winning 3-2. They've got Dayton Taki back, which is huge. He's just DHing, not quite mobile enough to really play the field, but even getting his bat in there as a DH is massive. And Braden Horton's done actually a pretty nice job filling in at first base the last couple of games or so. So they knock off Georgia last night, and they're into the quarterfinals this evening. It's Vanderbilt, who they took 2 of 3 from in Norman, back in the middle of April. So whatever happens the rest of the way, it's been a success. They're obviously clearly in the tournament. They're not going to host. They didn't quite do enough down the stretch to get to that line. But we talked about it, without worrying about hosting or anything like that. They just need to play better baseball. They just needed to have some kind of good vibes and, a little bit of momentum going into the postseason. I think they've got that. They've won 3 of the last 4. They're pitching really well. They're situationally hitting. Look, this team is not an offensive juggernaut like they were a year ago. They're not going to go score 10 runs and just hit a bunch of homers. Like they kind of have to grind out runs and then use their pitching and defense to win games, which they've done a lot this year. And they're doing that, 3-2 yesterday, 5-1 on Tuesday. Like that's how OU is going to win. And so been a good week already. They got Cade Crossland going tonight against Vandy. He pitched very well against Vandy last time. So we'll see what happens this evening. But a good run at Hoover already, no matter what happens the rest of the way. And I think if you're OU, you have to feel pretty good about going into the regionals next weekend. Like, okay, we're playing better baseball.
Yep.
And we'll have a chance to play some non-SEC teams, which will be nice, in the regional. And we'll let the chips fall from there. But I think there's reason to be optimistic and a little bit excited about what they've done the last handful of games here, that if the chips fall their way, they get a relatively favorable draw. They could make some noise next week in the regionals, but they're not done in Hoover yet. They could win tonight and keep playing. I'd certainly believe that. A lot to like with what they've done. First SEC tournament for them.
Guys, I actually was watching some of this game, and I want to know, how fast does Kyson Witherspoon? Is it a curveball or a 12-6 curve? How fast is that pitch moving?
I don't know. I mean, around like 8. I think it's pretty slow relative to his heater. I think it's like around 8.
Man, I mean, it seems like that's like such
and
a
he brought that in
difference.
mid-season. They talked about that on the broadcast. Skip Johnson introduced that pitch mid-season to Kyson. He wasn't using it earlier in the year.
Yeah.
He's just buckling dudes. Just buckling. When you throw high 90s and he can paint, and then you bust out that curve, which you can throw for strikes. That's the key, throwing it for strikes. Just pounding the bottom of the zone. He's unbelievable.
That's unbelievable. Insane. That's insane, man. I was watching, like, I don't know how these guys are even getting close to hitting that, because of the speed change and the way it moves. Like, it has such a good drop on it. That's crazy that he just learned it, this year. Basically, that's crazy, man.
He's special. We talked about it all year. He's going to have at least one more start, right? No uniform in the regionals next week. It's been a blast to cover him. OU's had some good pitchers, and I've covered the team for a while. I don't know if I've ever seen anyone as consistently dominant as Kyson has been this year. He's been incredible. And Skip Johnson said himself, Skip has coached a lot of big league pitchers, a lot. And he talked, I think it was maybe on the radio broadcast after the game, maybe it was on SEC Network, I'm not sure, where he said, Kyson, I think, might be as good as anyone I've ever coached, that's a huge statement. It's a guy that's coached Clayton Kershaw. He's coached Cade Horton, who's doing stuff in the bigs right now. Cade Cavalli was a high draft pick. Like, Skip has put a lot of pitchers in the majors, and Kyson will be there one day too. It's going to be a top 10 pick in the draft, later this summer. It's been a blast to watch him, and he just delivers every time. Every time. It's just, like I said, the consistent dominance is just unparalleled with what he's done. There's a reason he was named All SEC. He's a Golden Spikes semifinalist, which is basically the Heisman Trophy for college baseball, if you're unfamiliar. He's the man. He's been incredible all year. I'm very interested, and we'll see what happens tonight with Cade Crossland. I'm very interested in the regional next week, what they do with their pitching. Because last year, they went with Kyson on Friday night whenever Braden Davis was the ace. They saved Braden Davis for Saturday. Now, you can do that a little easier when you're the number 1 seed. You're playing a 4 that you should beat. They're going to be a 2 or 3 this time. Do they try to save Kyson for Saturday, or do they let him go on Friday? Because that's a conundrum. That's a tough question, because you need to win that first one. You're in deep trouble if you don't win that first one. But the temptation to save Kyson for the bigger opponent, the regional host, presumably on Saturday, would be tempting. So I'm very interested to see how Skip plays that next week. It may a little bit depend on how Cade Crossland throws tonight, frankly, but that's going to be an interesting question going into next week, how they want to manage the pitching. But yeah, Kyson Witherspoon's been unbelievable. It's been an awesome year. It's been so fun to watch him. He's a star. I'm excited to watch him go to the next level, and he'll be in the majors for too long. Cade Horton's up right now. He's made some starts recently for the Cubs. Kyson will be right there with him in the next, 2-3 years or so. He's special talent. It's been fun to watch all year, and he did it again yesterday. It was awesome.
Cade Horton is such a baseball name. That just fits. I love that.
Yeah. I think since I've covered the team, OU's had like 39 Cades.
Oh, really?
Not actually, but a lot. I mean, you got Cade Cavalli, Cade Horton, and there's a slew more. It's a very popular baseball name for whatever reason. If you name your kid Cade, he has like at least like a 50% chance of being a D1 baseball player. I think that's
hilarious. From what I've noticed, if you name your kid a Leah or something, she's going to be a really good basketball player. Like, it's always a Leah. Like, I don't know why. So maybe we're figuring out something here.
Yeah, there's a common thread in there somewhere with the name. Vanderbilt tonight. It's a 6:30 p.m. first pitch, approximately, at the SEC tournament. We'll see how it shakes out with the actual start time, but it'll be tonight. So the last game of the day this evening in Hoover. Blake and Koviak is going to have the coverage for that one for me on Sooners Illustrated, Oakland by 247sports.com. If they win, they get the day off tomorrow. SC tournament is so big, they had to build an off day to this thing. And they would have the semis on Saturday against either Tennessee or Texas. So keep an eye on that. We got the coverage the rest of the way. Selection show Monday, too, by the way. That's 11 a.m. on Monday. So by the time we do the show on Monday, we will have the bracket and know where they're headed, who they're playing, and we'll obviously preview the tournament a little bit on Monday. And nice. I would like to get out somewhere. There's been some projections that had them down in TCU, Fort Worth. I would certainly get down to that.
Yeah.
We'll see. We'll see where they wind up. The best thing, I said it jokingly, but it's serious. They won't go somewhere in the SEC. They will send them somewhere else. So you get to get away from the SEC. Now, there are some really other tough spots, but the fact that you don't have to go to any of these top-tier SEC teams is nice. So we'll see where they wind up when the bracket comes out on Monday. But playing better baseball, which is what they need to do, playing better baseball the last handful of games here. I think that's it. Like I said, I'll be back with James and Tom on Monday. Got a couple football, basketball things we want to hit. And, of course, we'll have a lot of Diamond Sports to talk about as well. Looking ahead to the WWS, recap of the Super Regionals. And, of course, we'll also, like I said, talk about the NCAA baseball tournament. We'll have the bracket reveal on Monday. Look for coverage of that as well over on the website. Be sure to subscribe. Oklahoma247sports.com. Great time of year. Lots of recruiting intel on the site right now. Both James Blake and, of course, our great Colin Kennedy have been pumping stuff out. And lots of Diamond Sports coverage. Summer football, media days are right around the corner. So great time to subscribe and join the community at Sooners Illustrated. I think that's it. For James D. Jackson, I'm Josh Cal. We'll be back on Monday, right back here as always on the Sooners Illustrated podcast.
See you.